Hey guys, Lynn here, back with another episode of Below the Line. This is the series where I look at your comments and your feedback, and then I give you guys some of my thoughts based off of those. It's a good way to have a conversation with my audience. This time I'm going to be talking about Battlefield, specifically Battlefield 5, but also a little bit about myself and Battlefield. The last video that I did on Battlefield had a massive amount of communication from you guys, a huge amount of discussion, some of it positive, some of it negative, some of it critical of me. I also want to talk a little bit just about myself and Battlefield and the whole kind of journey that I've been on there with that game in this video as well, a little bit. And also just to say, the background footage today you may remember from other times. I just grabbed anything that I had in my video folder there to sort of throw in for the background. It's not really important what this is, it's just background footage, so don't freak out about it. Also, I will say one thing today, guys. Usually when I do this series, I tend to pick out like the comments that I think have been most constructive or the best. I've actually picked some comments which are critical either of me or just, you know, in general, that discussion there. Some maybe a little bit more negative. The reason being is that I actually thought it'd be good to sort of explain some of those things there and answer those questions, because sometimes it's very easy to leave like a little comment or just read it and think whatever, ignore it. I actually thought it'd be good to answer that, and hopefully those people, or just in general, you guys will appreciate that. Before we get into the comments though, I just want to say a couple of things about myself and Battlefield as a series. Very often people say that, you know, I'm too objective focused, that it's not what it's about now, that people, you know, enjoy the game for just what it is, that it's this, you know, full-on thing, and that, you know, if I want to play objective, if I want to see that in a game, that I should just go do it somewhere else. I really don't believe that. I really don't support that. I think that, you know, if you look traditionally back to where Battlefield was, it's changed over time. I think there's many reasons for that. And honestly, at the end of the day, maybe it's true that it can't sort of change to where I would like to imagine it to be, and where I think that it would be best for, you know, the community, where I think it would be best for the game to be at, right? But, you know, that's not my decision. I don't have a massive amount of control over that, but I still get to voice my opinion. I still get to say what I think, right? And the other thing that ties into that is that, you know, we're all very well aware of how gaming and FPS gaming changes over time, right? You know, we see this, we see the way communities change and develop, and so many people are starting to say like, hey, you know, it's just something that can't be changed now. Again, maybe that's true, and that's why I've said multiple times that, you know, this is kind of like my last chance. It's the last sort of time I want to see whether or not anything can really happen here. But the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, people say like, why do you keep doing this? Why do you focus on this stuff so much, etc., etc.? It's because I believe that there is a genuine cause that it can happen. I genuinely believe that, you know, DICE and EA could take the decision to, you know, focus their game more in this direction. They could choose to do that. Now, the other thing is, and this is where that ties in, why do I think that? Well, look, I often reply to people who have said something in a comment or whatever, and I'll say, look, you know, I do get to speak to DICE, etc., blah, blah, blah. Now, look, I don't have a hotline to DICE and say, hey guys, I've thought of this, you should definitely do that. That's not it at all. Like, other producers get to speak to DICE and EA and stuff, guys that work with them all the time, producers that you know, so like Level, Jack, Westy, Matimio will probably be involved there as well, X Factor, all the guys that you know, all the guys that are big Battlefield producers who are involved, who have been to events that I have been to or that I haven't been to or whatever. All those guys are, you know, on and off, not all the time, on and off in communication. They probably have guys that they speak to on Skype. Everybody that's in that sphere is involved, but we're not the only ones. They speak to all sorts of different stuff. They have QA. It's like a huge ongoing community, and so everybody gets to put their thoughts and their ideas forward. And, you know, if you have somebody that you know personally or whatever, then you get to speak to them as well, right? Now, here's the thing that where that actually comes into sort of some focus for me, and why I sort of continue to talk about objective stuff, and why it's a passion of mine, right? The thing is that, like I say, you know, yeah, over time, there have been a couple of guys that work for DICE that I speak to on and off in a fairly casual way. What I draw from that is that there is, among people that work within DICE and EA, that there is like this sort of this feeling, and there's definitely some people who have a feeling that, yeah, they would like to see the game push back towards being more sort of tactical and objective. So it's not something that is out of the realm of possibility. Also, back when we were having the CTE and the Team Play Initiative, right? So back with that, with the CTE and the Team Play Initiative, they, you know, that was something that was meant to happen. It never did. But, you know, again, I had some ongoing conversations with Tom Pens and David Serland, who are working in that, in that process. I made a huge document telling them ideas and things that I thought would be good. We had a little discuss about it. They liked that idea, etc. So there's those kind of things that are going on there. Now, ultimately, it didn't happen. I was super pissed off about it. I was really annoyed. I was quite disillusioned that in the CTE, the Team Play Initiative never really happened. Instead, they went down the route of more maps and more guns. It fucking pissed me off. I was quite frustrated about that. And again, that's the kind of thing which makes you that's the kind of thing where you could take that and put a little red flag up and go, hey, that's a big worry. If they had an opportunity to push the game towards more team play stuff, and instead they did not, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is, I don't know who makes those decisions, right? But whatever reason, it was decided that stuff got shoved to the back. Now, my impression was that they really, really wanted to do it, but it just didn't happen. So who made that decision? I don't know. Nobody knows. So you don't know what's going on there. But the other thing that comes towards this is that, to me, okay, yeah, I get a lot of comments where people say, like, hey, if you want to play serious, just go play Armour, or go play Squad, or go play, something else. Yeah, of course, all right. I already play Armour because I love that kind of stuff, right? But here's the thing. I've said this many times over the past several years, that to me, Battlefield has the potential to be the greatest FPS. Because the graphics, astonishing, it's so immersive, it makes you, feel amazing. The mechanics, the flow, the movement, the range of weapons and sort of the dynamic there, all of those different things, the game modes, the sort of way that you can kind of interact, the structure, the foundation of the game in terms of server stability and all those kind of things, it's all very good. A lot of really good frames and so on and so on. So there's a hell of a lot that is really, really good about the game. And to me, it seems a waste to take that and just put it into this kind of box of people like fucking around, like pushing for their KD all the time, skins for guns, dog tags, bullshit, Easter eggs, all that shit that I don't care about at all, right? Now, obviously, some people are going to care about that, but I feel like it's a wasted opportunity to sort of take that and just throw it away. Now, again, some people also say, well, hey, look, Luton, I play games all the time and people really do push for the objective. Yeah, it's not untrue. In the game, when you're playing public games, people do kind of go for the objectives. What I'm saying is that we could help to ensure that happens more often. We could develop systems that encourage the player. Like I said, lead with the carrot, not with the stick. I said that in the video, okay? Encourage people to do it more. Now, if people still then choose to do whatever, but at least we've tried to do something that will try and encourage. That was the whole purpose of the Team Play Initiative back in the CTE. It was going to be designed to sort of enhance what is already there. Not like, put loads of rules down and say, you can't do this, you must not do this. The idea was to sort of build on those things. We had a huge opportunity back in the CTE to have like a year's worth of testing, because when it was supposed to happen, we could have had a year's worth of testing under our belt of trying new Team Play Initiative things, seeing how they work, and then we would have had that feedback to push into the next Battlefield game. But because it got dropped, we never got that. So now we'll never know whether those things would have been effective. Now we can't test those things. Instead, what we had was more maps and guns and people just doing the same thing. And that's yet another, that's like two reasons. One reason that it pissed me off was that I just wanted to see it. The second reason is that that's wasted info, which could have been used for the next game. So, those things really, really annoy me. And that's why we come back to this thing of me saying, this is the last opportunity, because if nothing changes with the next game, the reason, it's not just about me being like, oh, I don't get my own way, fuck this. It's not about that. It's about the fact that, if nothing changes, that is basically saying at that point they have no interest in doing these things further anymore. And it's not about what I want, it's about the fact that the series has moved in a direction where I don't feel anything that I would then have to say would have any impact, because I would feel like, hey, look, I've been talking about this forever, and not just me, but other people as well, okay? And if none of that feeds through and none of that gets taken on board, then clearly they just have their own plans about what they want to do. That feedback is not getting through, or it's just not considered the right direction anyway. And so therefore, yeah, it's like, okay, well, I guess at that point I will move on. But up until this point, I have tried to remain optimistic that there is a real, genuine possibility. And I say I base that off of my own feelings of conversations and things that I've spoken to other people, stuff that I've seen, things that have been put forward. And, like I say, with the Team Play Initiative, it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? That's a pretty big thing. So that I hope gives some little insight about sort of where I'm coming from and why I like to keep talking about this stuff, because I genuinely think, yes, it could happen, but it's up to them at the end of the day. It's their game, they're making it, they choose what goes into it. They have the ability to put this stuff in there, but it's down to them whether or not that happens. So with that all that said, and I hope that kind of clears a few lines there for people, let's get into your comments. So the first comment is a little bit of a critical one of me, and that's why I put it in there. Gaston Boucher says, a game is only meant for one thing and one thing only, to be enjoyed. Video games are digital entertainment that almost never was meant to be serious, unless being serious in a game is part of the enjoyment, like Armour is. I don't quite agree with that. Fine, state your opinion and view in the matter, but don't be an asshole towards those who enjoy the game in a different way than you do. I don't think I ever did. The community is not ruined if the majority of people playing are enjoying it. I think that is definitely true. So here's the thing. A game is only meant for one thing, and that's to be enjoyed. Absolutely. But the thing is, that's incredibly subjective. What does subjectivity mean? Subjectivity means that, you know, it's down to your personal feeling, you know. So you might enjoy running around stabbing people in the neck. You might enjoy, you know, hopefully in game and not real life, you might enjoy the tactical squad work that comes from being in a team of 4 or 5 guys and being on communication with them constantly and putting out a plan and working together to complete objectives and so on and so on. Those are two different sort of spectrums of things there. And, you know, ultimately, you can always do all those things in Battlefield, and that was always the kind of onus with Battlefield. It was always the kind of the game plan, the sort of the directive with the game was people can do what they want to do in the game, and that's always a really good thing. Okay, it's always a good thing to have freedom and be able to do what you want to do, and so on and so on. But what I have always come back to, I always have come back to this, right? If people screw around in a game, like they just kind of have their own little plan, they completely ignore the objectives and they just run around, let's just say fucking around, which means like, you know, going for ridiculous sort of trick shot kills, you know, I don't know, trying to complete some objective which has some sideways thing to it, or just with friends and they're just trying to get some, you know, videos of them throwing C4 at people or whatever. That gameplay directly disrupts and inhibits tactical play. But tactical play doesn't disrupt and inhibit people screwing around. So one has a negative impact on the other does not. And that's why I always say that the game's core focus should be around tactics and objectivity, and then a little bit of that other stuff on the side. It shouldn't be so free reign that people can kind of just do whatever, and then that basically means it's impossible to get any sort of tactical objective play. And that's what does happen, not all the time, but some of the time. What could we do to change that? You're never going to eliminate that. You're never going to be able to stop people from messing around in games. Of course not, okay? That's ridiculous. But as I say earlier, what you can do is you can put some things into the game. There's some of the stuff that I suggested in the last video, and some of the things that, like, say, Battle Nonsense has suggested, things that will help to encourage and influence people, leading with the carrot, not with the stick, okay? Stuff like, you know, pushing points towards team playing objectives, stuff like trying to come up with some kind of objective system which rewards people for playing the objective, stuff like giving more points to people capping flags that are valuable to the team. So like I said, the fluid scoring system, right? So you have 4 points, maybe your team only has 1 base, so if you cap that second base back, that's super important. You get a lot more rewarded. So things like that. And then, you know, have a direct trickle down to maybe unlocking gear and stuff like that over time. Those kind of things will help encourage people. That's not going to disrupt people that want to kind of go around and have fun doing whatever they do, jumping off buildings, C4ing people. That's not going to influence those guys, but it will maybe help to encourage other people that, you know, hey, you know, you can do that stuff, but, you know, look, you're going to get rewarded. It's going to help you. You're going to do better overall if you do those things. And hopefully that just means that in general, we will get better quality games for other people. And, you know, this is not about just for me. It's not about me just like wanting a certain thing with a game. It's about trying to help and hope that other people can get, you know, better experiences with the games too. Because I genuinely believe that people coming in don't just want to fuck around. I genuinely believe that a lot of people coming into the game, even if they're playing casually, want to see that kind of team play dynamic. That's what I think. Okay, next up is Lambert Gerardin, I hope that's correct. Another great video, Luton. I, like a lot of other subscribers here on the channel, agree on basically every aspect you are able to bring up in this video. What you have to understand, though, is that the game is changing. EA DICE has to adapt to the new market where people just want to run around and kill people randomly around the map. Don't want to say Battlefield 5 will turn into some sort of COD, but still, the style Battlefield 4 was given is probably the one DICE and EA will also go for in Battlefield 5. I don't know, is the answer to that. We don't know. I would hope that in the next 3-4 months we might hear some more about the game, and therefore we will, start to discern what it's going to be about, and therefore maybe we can start to draw some conclusions about the direction that they're going in. But at this current time we don't know anything about it really. So, is it to say that they're just going to go down the same route, they're not going to change anything? Again, from what I have inferred and my general feeling, the answer is it's possible. It's also possible that they could try and do that, but then, as I say, try and encourage other elements in there, and that's really what I hope to see. I think I don't want to be too cynical and be like it's going to be just the same, it's going to suck, it's going to be bullshit, I abandon this, I'm done. I don't really want to be like that, because I want to keep faith that a game which I've played for, I don't know how long have I played Battlefield for, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, a long time. I've been playing the game for a long time. So many years I can't remember, let's just say that. I've been playing this game a long time. I've never claimed to be the best player, I always said that my sort of ability to, think around problems and work together with other people was my best trait, not necessarily my gunplay. I think that's almost 100% true most of the time. But, I wouldn't have been playing this game that long if I didn't enjoy it. Right? So there's a lot of stuff that I enjoy about the game, but I want it to be better. Now, that's my opinion. That's my subjective opinion about what I think makes better. But it's all an ongoing conversation. Everybody gets to give their feedback. And, okay, maybe we end up being a smaller percentage of people. But if we're putting in changes which don't have a significantly, like I was saying a minute ago, if the changes that you put in for team play stuff don't have a detrimental impact on the people that just want to do whatever that is that they're doing, which doesn't really sort of help anybody in terms of the objective, right? Well, it's like I say, one thing negatively affects the other does not. It's quite as simple as that. Okay, Taz Music says, you have a cheeky view on this game. I agree that team play is fun, but it can't be demanded or controlled by the developers. Some people just want to go on and play and tickle shit around, and you complaining about that on public servers is the exact reason why they allow you to have your own servers to control that. Which they didn't do in Star Wars Battlefront, which you had the best games you've ever played. So if you were so concerned about team play, just rent your own servers and don't demand that the developers can control that everybody plays objective. Never claimed that they should force people to play the objective. Again, what I have said is that, we need to... I said this in the last video. Lead with the carrot, not with the stick. It's about encouraging team play. It's not about forcing team play. You can create mechanics which push people towards the objective. That doesn't mean to say that they have to do it, it just means that you're directing them more towards it in a multitude of different ways, and thereby, cast a wider net, hope that you catch more people to do it more, right? So there's a lot of that stuff going on. But again, characterizing myself as somebody who is trying to take fun away from people or force people to do things is fundamentally wrong. You need to maybe get a better perspective of me as a person and a producer before you start making those kind of statements. You need to look at videos that I've made in the past where I'm literally like pissing myself laughing because something has gone wrong. I seem to remember a video I made back around the release of Battlefield 4 where a tank kind of drove off and just left me standing there, and the hilarity of this situation, of the fact that I think I was in the tank and I jumped out to rep and some guy jumped in and just drove away, even though my tank was only at 20% health, and then it either got destroyed or I got shot or something, and I just kind of had a laughter breakdown because I was just the hilarity of the situation was so stupid. I also seem to remember that I made a video one time where I picked I wanted to highlight that anybody with even a moderate skill level and not even trying can do well in the game. I was trying to highlight the fact that choosing weapons and stuff doesn't matter. I picked a G36 and some C4 and I just ran around on Siege of Shanghai shooting and fucking shit up, and I think I got top score. It was so there's things like that. I don't play serious all the time. It's not serious business all the time, but I like playing like that. And yeah, you know, on our server, we have had a lot of games which are the best games we have ever had. We have more games come down to like, you know, 10 tickets aside than any other games you will see. You know, we have that so much. We've had so many games come down to 1 ticket per side. It's ridiculous, okay? And, you know, yeah, I fully intend to do it again. In fact, I was talking to Level Cap this week about, like, what we may see in the next game and, you know, what we would hope to see and blah, blah, blah. And I was telling him, I was saying, like, dude, I think, you know, what I want to do with the next Battlefield is maybe what I need to do is really, you know, in the past I've had a server, maybe I really need to push this as a thing. Maybe I really need to push it and say, look, you know, they're not providing this stuff. If you want to get that kind of gameplay, come to me, come to my server, come and get that gameplay, you know, and really kind of try and champion it. Maybe actually try and get, you know, Dice and the guys involved and sort of shout it out a bit and say, look, you want to get some good, strong tactical team play? You know, the public games are shit. Go and play with Luton. You know, so they're not going to say that, are they? But like, that's the way I'm coming from. Okay, another critical one next. Gary Washington, terrible video. Oh, thanks, Gary. The game should not force players to play objectively. It should reward playing objectively, which it already does. Really? Does it? It doesn't seem surprising that you had your best matches when you invited a server full of friends playing competitive, yet you act surprised and conclude this is how the game should be. Newsflash, it already is. Not to mention your playstyle of spamming 80 rockets and grenades in Operation Lockers. I think I did that once, maybe twice in that video. Please go. You and your incoherent videos will not be missed. Well, you know, it's difficult to really draw anything from these kind of comments. I thought I'd throw this one in here just to kind of show in the mix there. I know this series is meant to be about kind of like the best, most constructive comments, and judging from Gary's avatar, I'm sure that he has his own critical video breakdowns talking about the game in detail, where, you know, he would definitely be able to, you know, put up a video compared to mine, and, you know, we can hear his thoughts, which are probably a lot better. But you know, what can you really say? Only the things that I've said already, and, you know, people hopefully will listen. It should reward playing objectively. Yeah, it should. That's what I've said for a long time. That's why I came up with ideas and suggestions as to how that could happen, which it already does. It doesn't do that. That's why, for example, capping a flag would get you 100 points, and killing one person would get you 100 points, right? That doesn't reward you for playing objectively. What that's doing is rewarding you for killing and pushing your KD. All the assignments, all of those things tend to be focused around some variation of just killing, or those kind of stats, or doing some kind of stupid trick shot or whatever, or being up on a bloody tower trying to snipe people, and all these kind of things. They never seem to be focused around the actual core mechanics of the game, which is, you know, the game mode itself. They never seem to be focused around that. I think we maybe had like one here or there which was focused around it, but predominantly it's all based around that killing. And you can say, like, of course it's an FPS, of course it's going to be a lot of stuff focused around killing and blowing things up and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, of course, but there's a disparity between the amount of stuff with those assignments, or the attachment unlocks and all those kind of things. It's one of these things, if you were to tweak that, you might see overall more stuff. So his assertion that the game already does it is pretty much predominantly incorrect. And also, as I say, tied into the things and my suggestions, it's all about sort of trying to encourage and get to that point where we do actually see that sort of thing going on. Okay, next up, Fox Warder, and he had a really, really good comment, but it was a massive comment. So I'm not really going to reply to it, but I thought it was very worth people seeing and hearing, so I'm going to read it to you. Okay, so Fox says, I'm definitely in your boat, Luton. Battlefield 5 must satisfy some basic requirements, or the franchise is going on a permanent suspension from my interest. Now, I'm sure if you were bouncing around the CTE forums back in the team play days, the team play thing never really sort of got started, I want to say again, you've seen at least some of what I'm about to say. I'm skeptical that point systems are generally that useful in incentivizing players in an FPS. We have kind of discussed this before. I think I said that what it is that you see people want to be up on top, but they don't really care about the score. That was what somebody said to me back in the days of World of Warcraft. You know, people remember you on top, but they don't care about what you actually did. I think that's pretty true. Ideally, points are a reflection of your usefulness in the team. That's definitely true. The player who has provided the most tangible benefit to the team should have the most points, but not everyone can be a winner, and not every role can yield the kind of points necessary to top the board. You'll run into this problem where, let's just say, for the sake of argument, the medic is more valuable than the engineer. The engineer's usefulness is highly limited and restricted to dealing with the finite amount of vehicles being fielded when applicable. The medic is, on the other hand, is always useful regardless of map or situation. That's a really good example. The The direct usefulness of the medic when facing a vehicle is diminished, but their ability to generate points for themselves never really goes away. Reviving and healing friendly players is of great value and generally helpful in most every situation, but not all granted. Yet I think we can agree that without engineers in certain situations there is no hope of winning a game against dominant vehicles. At the same time, there are far fewer available points to keep engineers looking to destroy an enemy vehicle or repair a critical piece of armour. To account for this, DICE tries to make it so killing players served as an equaliser, something that all classes could do and is generally beneficial to the team. This perverts incentives in-game, but is not inherently the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that no matter what, not all classes are of equal benefit to the team. This is also true, but I think that's not completely accurate. I think depending on how you play is not of equal benefit to the team. We talk a lot about how classes should be more defined and less universal, i.e. not everyone ought to be a killing machine, yet I believe that this would make things potentially worse, not better, given the game modes of Battlefield. The proposed solution to this is to tie more points directly into objectives in Battlefield. This is kind of what I had alluded to, diminishing the importance of individual class point schemes. This could work in Conquest to a limited degree, yet once again you're driving players to focus on one behaviour instead of the bigger picture. The truth is, Battlefield has a lot of hidden secondary objectives. They aren't marked because they are organic. Let's go back to the above example of the dominant vehicle. In order to push a point, it may be necessary to neutralise another threat. Breaking off from the main attack to neutralise this threat can be critical and the difference in the game. I have said this many times. Yet, if the threat itself is not a labelled objective, then the person or people who set out to neutralise it may miss their chance at scoring big when the rest of the team finally captures the labelled objective. Long story short, it is, in my opinion, that attempting to quantify the benefit of a single player in such a complex and emergent game is a fool's errand and counterproductive. Instead, there should be one goal that matters: winning. Winning is the great equaliser. Let's look at MOBAs for a minute. The three big MOBAs give out points to players based on two main factors: time and winning. Yes, each game keeps track of your stats, but none of those stats actually affect the prize at the end of the round. Instead, you get a handful of points for showing up, plus some extra if the game lasts a long time. The winning team gets more points, with the idea that after a predetermined amount of time playing the game, players are guaranteed some sort of reward. The more you win, the more you reduce the time until you receive your next reward. In this way, the only thing that matters is winning. And if you can't win, dig in your heels, because the harder and longer you fight, the more points you can accrue for playing a single round once the round is over. Quitters get either no points, or very few depending on how long they're in the game. Now, an obvious flaw in this system is that teams can play with their food. A dominant team can drag out a game just to get more points, with limited risk that the other team can mount a comeback. In MOBAs, comebacks become more likely the longer a game lasts, just based on the nature of the gameplay, but Battlefield as it is now has no such safeguard. The only real safeguard to this is to create a sweet spot for gaining points. If a game lasts too much longer, then serious diminishing returns on points rewarded to each team start to kick in. This would obviously require strict management of ranked games, namely no more high-ticket servers. I can fully agree with that. Tying progress and unlocks to playing to the end of a round will help incentivize players to just do what it takes to win, regardless of personal stats, if the personal stats give no benefit whatsoever. Could be used for potential MM, however. It will also keep players in the game to the end of the round, instead of encouraging too much server hopping. I don't know if that happens too much, but I think it definitely does, especially at the end of a round, you know. On the flip side, it would also promote team stacking. However, that's a manageable problem. For instance, you could give out bonus points to people who get moved to the losing team at the end of the round to help compensate the more time they spent on the winning team, the bigger their prizes for switching. The only issues that I have with that as well are things like, for example, you say like, well, dig your heels in and just fight it out. But again, you know, there's definitely a possibility of some people trying to waste time and, you know, they realise they can't win, so they just waste time. Does that really add anything to the battle? So there's a few things going on there that I'm not too sure about. Okay, then Fox has got one last thing to say. He says, I'm not that concerned about guns. I don't think that DICE needs to toy with gunplay that much. It's not a deal breaker for me. Personally, if they're kind of samey at the end of the day, that is a deal breaker for me, because I feel like they really need to have strong personal feel so that people can pick and choose and build their loadouts a lot more effectively, not just, as I have demonstrated in the past, grab anything and just run out there and do generally alright. You know, it should be a lot more kind of a skill-based decision about what you're taking there. But he does say, for God's sake, use less explosives dice. Make most explosives battle pickups on infantry-orientated maps. Think of them like infantry-based vehicles. Again, it's, that's a difficult one to throw. I personally don't find I have too much of a problem with explosives. I wonder if what he's alluding to there is people just using RPGs and rockets to like shoot down and blow people up and things. I think that genuinely may be a problem, but that's a very difficult one to rule out, and it's something that has always been there. It's always been in the game. It's not a new thing that's come in. There's always been grenades, there's always been RPGs, there's always been rockets and all those kind of things. There's always been helicopters raining shit down. Again, the helicopter issue and the aircraft issue is one that's actually been kind of not resolved, but it's definitely been a lot improved on, say, Bad Company. When people talk a lot about Bad Company and they go on and on about like how amazing a game it was and how it was like the golden time, how many of those players remember helicopters spinning around you in circles on and on and on, with people not being able to take them down while they rained horrific death just down on you? Because I remember that happening a lot of the time. So yeah, there's a lot of things in Bad Company that sort of people remember with a little bit of rose-tinted glasses, definitely. Okay, and then I'm just going to skip through a bit of this because we've got to go on with the video. He alludes to a few different things in the game, but then he comes to say at the end, I could go on, but if DICE hasn't grasped the essence of what they need to do by now, the battlefield has already been lost. Question for Luton, have you played Dirty Bomb? I haven't played that. And also, stop splitting the community with DLC, hashtag free the maps. I personally do not believe that that's going to happen, despite the massive amount of people who want it to happen. I don't believe it will, because I think it's EA's decision, and they have got their season pass shit going down. I don't think that's going to change. Next comment is a really short one. Tryhard Raven. Now, people might not remember Raven or even know who Raven is. Raven used to play with me back on PlayStation on the YouTube channel. If you went back, you might be able to find a video where I'm in with him, I think. But basically, what I will say is that Raven was an exceptionally skilled player. Raven was one of those guys like Lone Wolf and some of the other Supra, the guys that I play with, alright, who are sitting on the top of the board and they are very skilled at the game. And so for Raven to come, and Raven doesn't comment on my videos very much, but I know that he's been sort of following me on and off ever since I was doing PlayStation stuff, so it's a long time, like 4 or 5 years maybe. So Raven says though, this community is too far gone, gave up on it a long time ago. That's sad, that's a sad thing, because as I say, from what I know and remember playing with Raven, he was a really good player, and he knew what he was up to with this game. And so, this is the kind of thing that I see and hear a lot. And you see, when I'm seeing and hearing from people that I know have a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge about a game come in and make statements like that, and then I have people come to me on my video in the comments and say, shut up Luton, people can play how they want, they paid their money, they can do what they want, and it's like, yeah, do you not see how your argument is not stacking up for me the same as an argument from someone who I know and respect? And that's why it's difficult sometimes to really give those kind of things much credence, and why I put more value and, sometimes a little bit more disillusionment, sadly, in the fact that I hear from people who are hardcore FPS players, people that are, high skill level, and who just seem to have had enough. They just are like, enough's enough. And that, to me, I think is a sad thing. Okay, next up, Rob Enter. Rob has been a long time subscriber of mine, and Rob's one of those guys who follows me and, but he doesn't mind telling me exactly what he thinks, and I really respect that. I like it when people will give back, sometimes critical, sometimes positive, but all the way they make a good argument, and that's what Rob has always done with his comments. Anyway, Rob says, in the end, they want to sell games. This is true. The game that gets developed as a result of that fact, unfortunately, will not be the game you are looking for. If we study history, I don't think we'll find any evidence that will support a situation where DICE EA will do what's right if it doesn't align with their overall strategy to maximise profits. Look at BF Hardline, 80% of its sales were for the PS4, Xbox One. It's true, their markets were massively higher than on the PC. Clearly EA sees dollar signs, of course they do, because they're a gigantic company in the console shooter market, which has obviously had its effect on the types of games DICE now push out. We now have had Hardline and Battlefront come out. They're clearly meant for console owners, with Battlefield 4 having been a mix. Will Battlefield 5 be any different? I hope so. Well, I think there feels like a little bit of illusion, and if Rob wants to reply in the comments and clear it up for me, but there feels like a little bit of illusion there to saying, like, if a game's not developed for PC and ported to console, then it doesn't stack up. Now, you only have to look at recently with Doom, okay, so Doom and the multiplayer aspect there, yes, it was not produced by the same guys that are doing the single player, but basically there was a lot of issues there with Doom and the multiplayer, and I'm not the only person to have said about it, and the clear thing with it is that it was, from the way they've done it, the speed that it works, etc., etc., it's clearly been designed with consoles in mind first, and then PC second. Now, whenever there's some kind of priority there, that's always going to bother people a lot, right? But look, I played consoles all my life. I've also played PC. When I played World of Warcraft for 4 years, really, 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 really hardcore. I was on PC. Then I went back to console for a bit. Now I'm back to PC. I don't have any huge bias when it comes to each platform, but I probably will stay with PC now, just for the very simple reason I just find it a lot more ergonomic and comfortable to use a mouse and keyboard than a control pad. Yeah, I still use my Xbox controller all the time for some games on the PC, so it's not out of the realms of possibility, but there's a lot of logistical reasons there. But also you've got to remember there's different markets out there. There really is. Gaming is a big market space for a lot of different people, and ultimately it's 100% true what he says. EA is a company. I've said this in videos in the past when I've talked about different things. Of course, EA are a big business. That's what they are. They sell games. That's the business they're in. They want to sell as many as possible. They want to do that through a variety of different methods, from marketing to the design of the game to, sourcing your, target market and figuring out, like, what it is that they want. Okay? Now, unfortunately, and this is where we come to a logical conclusion, right? So yes, it's true, and this is where we've kind of been going and where we're saying, and it comes right back to that thing that I've been saying of, this is the last chance for Battlefield for me, because this is the game. The next game is the game where we say, look, have they gone full commercial? Have they gone down the route of, we want to simply sell as many games as possible and deal lip service to the more kind of, long-standing hardcore community, right? I mean, that's for a broad generalization, but that's kind of where I'm looking at it from anyway. So it's like, are they planning to push a game which is going to shift as many copies as they possibly can? Well, they're always going to do that, but are they going to do that at the expense of, as I say, the longer standing community that maybe want different aspects from it? Now, that's not going to apply to everybody. I'm sure there are some long standing players who just want to fuck around, but I would like to think that if you've been playing Battlefield for a long time, there's a little bit more to the game than that, right? The honest answer is, we just have to wait and see. We don't know. But what it comes down to is that if they decide with this game to go that route of really pushing a game which, doesn't highlight those points that we think it needs, and just really, really goes down a similar route of hardline of, sort of really capitalizing on the casual market. There's always that thing of, I think something that I loved was in Squad, where when I was talking to the guys from Squad and I said, like, what's the premise of your game with Squad? And they were like, in Squad, you don't matter. You're a grunt. If you die, whatever, Whereas in Battlefield, I often feel like they sort of push this feeling, and a lot of the big AAA shooters, actually, they push this feeling of, you're a super soldier, you're the best, that's where you're going to be top of the board, and you can take down a jet with a knife. It's all that kind of stuff. It's like, you're a super soldier. I never have approached it like that. I've always thought, I'm a guy, I'm doing this, blah, 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 get it done. That's how it works, and not this kind of like, I'm going to be like jumping off a building, spinning around and sniping two guys. That's never how I've approached it. But again, that's just my subjective opinion. But yeah, basically what Rob's saying is, the game's very commercial, of course, because it's a big AAA game. Is it going to be what we want? We have to wait and see. It probably won't be. And it's like, yeah, I think we all agree with that. Okay, finally, last comment. KevTCC, who I featured previously, but he left another good comment, so I decided to feature him again. Hey Lutin, thanks for showcasing a comment of mine in a video. It was neat to see. Neat. That's such a US word, isn't it? Neat. People don't use neat in that way in the UK. With respect to people not wanting to switch kits, I think this is directly associated with how much of a grind Battlefield has become. Not only do you have to research which cryptic combination of gadgets won't completely wreck your ability to shoot, you have to spend hours and days playing with crap you'll never use again in order to get the good stuff. It's definitely true, isn't it? I mean, the amount of bloody videos I've seen about best this, best weapon this, best loadout this, that and the other, and you know, the rise of loadout videos, and that's not a snipe at Level, okay? You know, Level's my friend, I'm not having a go at him, but what I'm saying is, like, you know, what we saw around Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 was this kind of new style of video, of course, which is like the kind of how do you build your kit, what's the best way to build your kit, and there's a lot of different producers who have done those. You know, it's a very widespread thing on YouTube now, and Level is like the champion of that. He really goes into the sort of meta and like work out, you know, what is the best thing to do with these kind of setups and all this kind of stuff. I actually think, you know, there's a lot of people, of course, who really appreciate that kind of content and want to see it. But from another point of view, I think what Kev here is trying to say is that it's kind of a bit of a, you know, it takes time to figure out all of those kind of things, and that's time that's taken away from just getting into the game and getting on with things. And I kind of definitely agree with that perspective, because and this is something that is not that I've said before, okay, this is not a new thing that I've said this before. I've said that, for example, like, again, I use the example because it's my best example of Call of Duty 4. In COD 4 you had fairly simplistic loadout systems, and you would pick your gun, you would pick this and that, you'd get into the game. But with Battlefield, very often it's like, oh, I've got to tweak this, tweak that, what grip do I want to take, what optic do I want to take, blah, blah, blah. That's all nice stuff to have, but it's true, like, sometimes it feels a little bit overplayed. And if you're in the middle of a battle situation, you want to be able to, you know, make that work. What I would suggest, okay, so what my solution to that would be is, I don't think that they're going to want to take that away. I don't think they're going to want to go super simplistic with it. I also don't think it's entirely negative to have a good depth, you know, a good depth to your loadout system. I don't think it's a bad thing that that has become a thing, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think it's good to be able to help people with it. In a similar way that, you know, I have done a couple of videos in the past where I did like armor loadouts, and I was saying like, hey, you know, look, if you're playing armor and you want to go down this kit route, this is some good stuff to take. That's helpful, constructive advice to people playing the game who want to get better, right? But with Battlefield, what I think they need to do is to actually implement a properly savable loadout system, and not like, you know, 5, and don't do some fucking bullshit where like you know, you have to unlock this and then you have to have premium to get this and this. Look, just give people a solid like 10 loadouts per class, right, from the baseline. Don't do any bullshit with like premium for more. Just give 10 loadout sets for each class, and then people have the freedom to build really good kits, make it so that you can change them out in game, and then that will enable and drive that loadout system. It will enable you to have like really good kit systems that mean that you can really go in depth, and you don't have to think about that when you're in game. You don't have to worry about it. You can build your kit ahead of time. You can spend like time, like in armor, okay? In armor, I will go in and I will spend time going through and setting up all of my kits, so that then when I'm playing, I don't have to spend time worrying about fiddling around with it. I go in, I pick the kit I want, and I go. And that's how it should be in Battlefield. If you're going to have an in-depth system, you need to do it. Now, obviously, before anybody freaks out, yes, they do have that loadout system kind of in there, but they haven't done it well. It was an afterthought, and very recently I came back onto the game to find that all of that stuff had been wiped in some, it must have been one of the updates. So, you know, this is what I'm saying. It needs to be better implemented, and it needs to be there from day one, and there needs to be enough that you can put a good level of customization for each class. Okay, Kev goes on to say, in Battlefield 2 and Bad Company 2, I was able to switch immediately anytime something was needed, which is what I just said. Now I have to think about if I even have the right stuff to deal with a different threat, and the reality that if I do, switching to my crappy kit and someone else deals with the threat, not only will I not get the credit for it, but likely I'm going to get killed because someone who has their good kit. So I think he's just saying that like the overcomplication can cause you problems there. He said it started in Battlefield 3, but full fruition in Battlefield 4, which is, yeah, what I said. He says, wow, this is a great idea. Make KD score a percentage bonus on your objective score. So if you kill tons of people, but don't actually put yourself at risk to take an objective, then you get a 40% bonus on a 0 score. This would make me very happy. This way, people that truly are great players, who move and attack and defend, and who are able to get kills while doing this, will get the biggest rewards, while people who hide in hallways and kill 14 people in a row get next to nothing. This is probably the best suggestion you have ever had for Battlefield and DICE. Yeah, I was very happy with that suggestion. because that suggestion really kind of alluded to the core of what I've been talking about, which is it's kind of like a passive way of encouraging people. It's like, look, here's what we're saying, right? And let's just we're rounding off now anyway. So let's just highlight a couple of things. I'm going to state it yet again. My ideas and what I want from the next Battlefield is not to force people to play objectively. Okay, it's not about forcing people, because ultimately, and you only have to look at things in real life to know this, if you try and force people to do things, if you try and clamp down people and push them to do something, generally what happens is that people rebel against that, they don't want to do it, and they push back against it. Okay, it doesn't work. What you need to do is encourage people, and that is generally done through positive reinforcement rather than just negatively beating on people. Otherwise people resent that, and then they kind of usually go in the other direction, right? And it gets worse. So it's about positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is stuff like saying, look, if you want to just run around and get kills, well, that's fine. You're going to get some XP for that, or whatever system, okay? You're going to get some XP for that. If you want to fuck around and mess around with your friends and get knife kills and C4 stuff, you're going to get some points, you're going to get a bit of XP, but you won't really get very much because you're not really doing the core principle of what the game is about. The game modes exist because that's what you're there to do. If it's a game of Conquest, you're there to play Conquest. If it's a game of Rush, you're there to play Rush. If it's a game of TDM, you're there to kill people and, work as a team to kill more of the other guys. That's the purpose of those modes. That's the core focus of the game. So what we say is, hey, look, if you want to do one aspect of that mode, well, then you'll get kind of like only rewarded a certain percentage. If there's you think of like attack, defense, and tactical team play, let's just, although those things could obviously have tactics, but let's just say 3 things, right? If you only decide that all you're going to do is attack, i.e. kill, you're probably going to get about a third of the reward there. If you're going to attack, but you're also very aware of other players coming in, and you're going to focus on defending and neutralizing enemy vehicles, that qualifies defense as well, you're going to get like 2/3 of the reward at the end of the round. And hey, if you're moving around and like working with other squads and healing them up and doing all of those other things all together, you're going to get even more reward. You're going to get higher on the board, you're going to be on top of the board, you might get special rewards, you might get more points to unlock things quickly, and especially if they have a good, solid unlock system, which takes time to unlock and also brings in other players and stuff. That's what I want to see. That's the way I want to see things to go. It's about sort of structuring the reward system of the game so that it benefits people, so that if they choose to play the objective, if they choose to work as a team, and if they choose to sort of really push hard against the enemy, they get rewarded for that. If they choose to do other things, they will still get something, but they'll get less of something. Now that's not punishing people, it just means that you are encouraging people more and saying, hey, look, here are your options, you can do this, and nobody's stopping you from doing that, but we want to make sure that we're rewarding the people who are really getting to grips with things. And to me, I think that really summarizes everything that I speak about Battlefield. And again, just to round off and saying, I genuinely positively believe that they could do this if they want to. I think I said this last time. It's down to DICE and EA. They can choose to make the game better by, looking at how they can kind of benefit people that really, really want to play what the core of the game is about. But if they don't care about that, and they just want to focus on producing a shiny, loot fest, well, then at that point I will say I no longer have faith that you're driving the game in the direction that I and other people feel that that's where it came from, and that's where it needs to be directed back towards. So we will see what happens, but as people highlight to me constantly, there are plenty of other tactical games out there. I know because I play them. So at the end of the day, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not the end of the world, and it's definitely not the end of the road if the next Battlefield doesn't turn out how I want to. But like I say, it's not about me thinking this is how the game must be. It's not about that. But I feel, like I said at the beginning, that Battlefield has the potential to be the greatest FPS. But in my opinion, the only way that it can do that is by pushing people towards making the battles real, in terms of the real fight for it. And yes, you know, I can host those privately. I can build a server and try and build like a niche community around that. But I feel in the long run, it'll be better, not just for Battlefield, but better for like FPS communities in general, you know, to sort of drive that, to drive people towards being better team players and really focusing that sort of aspect of like, we're playing for the win, we're not playing for the solo glory. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, this has been a long one, so congrats if you made it all the way through. Thanks to everybody who comments and supports me through all the videos that I make. As usual, you guys are awesome, and especially some of the guys who have been around for a long time now, because some of you guys have been watching me for years now, and I really appreciate all of your support. My channel continues to be extremely hard work, but I'm cracking it through. I'm trying to get a new editing computer at the moment. I've been saving some money. It's going to cost me about £2 grand, so hopefully I'll have that soon. I'm pushing pretty hard to try and get that in the next month or two, and I'm hoping that that's going to make my life a bit easier, because it means that I'll be able to basically edit quicker, export quicker, get stuff up, and as many of you guys who watch and listen to me live stream and all this kind of stuff, you guys know that my life, and follow me on Twitter, know that my life is a constant battle of time, trying to sort of balance the fact that I work a full-time job and do all my editing and do all my gameplay and do all my streaming and try to have a life on top of all of those things. So it's a big juggling act for me, but I appreciate all your support as always, guys. Don't forget you can come to the live streams as usual, and all that stuff. I do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Alright, guys, thank you very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please leave your comments about Battlefield 5 down in the comments below. I will read them. See you next time for some more Below the Line.